Hey everyone, welcome to our info session tonight. Now I've got Stevie B who's going to join me in a second, but until then, what we're going to do today is talk about how to create your own program. So we've created a workout template for you to use. So if you've got that in front of you, great. Otherwise, Stevie B will join us in a second. We'll start there. So what we do want to do is here, let's bring him in. Feeling the moment because that's where we're going to start. Here he is, Stevie B. How are you, mate?
Hello, I'm doing really
Hello, I'm
well.
doing really well.
Cool, cool. So 1 second, I'm going to flip this around.
That's good.
That's good.
Looks like that worked. Have we flipped?
Ooh, there we go. All right.
Steve on that.
Okay. Let me get my screens up here as well so I can see exactly what we're talking about.
How's that? Can you see me there, Stevie B?
Yes.
Just checking in. Beautiful. All
Come.
right. For those who are watching,
I mean,
can you just have a think? If you're here, let us know, please, because we want to chat. We want to say good day. But also, how are you feeling at the moment? You can use the emojis just to let us know. We'll check in as well. Looks like Stevie Bonner's got a tear face for some reason. And if you have any questions along the way throughout this presentation, please put them in the comments. We'll do our best to answer those questions. We want it to be as interactive as possible. Hey Tam, thanks for joining. So yeah, keep that in mind as we flick through. So today is about creating your own program and how to do that for the next 2 weeks at least for our challenge, and then beyond that as well, so into the future. And it's with Kane and Steve. So this is what we're going to touch on. Essentially, what has worked for you so far? So think about the things that have changed that maybe you're even noticing. Hey Vicky, thanks for joining as well, to make your goal possible. So there's some things that may have happened already. I'm going to chat about progressive overload, which I've talked about before in a previous presentation. Stevie B is going to take us through the benefits of cardio and strength, and then we're both going to talk about how you can create your own program going forward.
Kane,
So,
can
hey,
I
Jacob,
just jump in for a second? Can you
Yep.
come a little bit closer into the screen so we can see your lovely face? Oh,
How's that?
might have too much darkness in your house. That's okay. It's fine. That's fine. That'll do.
Yeah. Oh no, I'll fix that in a
That's
second.
fine. Don't stress.
Cool. Let me fix that in 1 second. And then where's my mouse? All right, we'll start here. So how are you feeling? Please put in the comments. And after yesterday's session, Rach talking to Kathy, what she did speak about is it's okay to feel flat. So if you do have points where you feel flat and tired, I can see Steve laughing at me, so I'll fix it.
No, you're good.
There we go. That should work. If you are feeling flat and tired, it's all right to feel that way. You can just recognize that you're feeling a little bit down, go and do what you need to do. It might be go for a run, it might be a workout. It might just be going to your room and have a cry. So that's all right, as long as you recognize that, but then move forward and continue out of it. Just to reiterate that point that Kathy made last night, which I think is really important. So there's probably some small changes you've made, especially with our physical goals. So if your goal was to, let's say, keep coming back to it, but run 10Ks, there's a few of us who have done it, and Ingi's already ticked it off, so well done, Ingi. There might be some things that have changed in terms of you might have done your run in the mornings, which has worked. You might have done your run after having some food or even before, things that you've changed in behaviors around that. So just recognize those small things that may have changed that have helped you get to that point. Well, here we go. Kerry's already done it for us. Thanks to Steve. Yeah, Stevie's pretty good. We're going to try and help as many people as we can tonight, because I know he has helped Kerry out again. So just recognise those small things that you may have changed without even knowing in your life and make those consistent from now on. So that'll help create this change behavior into a habit. All right. So we've seen this slide before, and we started with the SMART goals at the start of our program, but this time we're going to make them smarter. So we're going to stop and evaluate where we're at. And we can do that on a daily basis, but at the moment we're about just over halfway, nearly to the end of the program actually. So we need to evaluate how much progress we've made for a goal. Maybe we've ticked it off as Ingy already has, and she's probably re-evaluating, creating a new one. Or are we a little bit further away than we thought we would be, and maybe we readjust and put some smaller steps in before we get to that larger goal. So take a little bit of time just to think about where you're at in your own goal. Tonight we're going to be talking about the physical goals more than anything, because that's our area of expertise. So take that time. We've already done the SMART part, but the E and the R at the end of it is something we should do a little bit more often, I think. So if I go here, I'm going to touch on progressive overload, which is something I've spoken about before. And with this graph I've got in front of me, you can see this is our workout. So if we have a workout, our body goes into essentially a deficit. You've done damage to your body, essentially, and what happens is it repairs it. Your body's really smart, and it only will adapt to change when it needs to. So if you're only going to run 5Ks, you only get better at running 5Ks. You won't be able to run a marathon straight away because you can run 5. It only adjusts to things that it needs to. So if you do enough damage to your body, it's going to come to a point, a super compensation essentially, so it becomes stronger than it was before, so that if it comes to this situation again, it can easily adapt to it and handle that situation. That's the idea behind training. So we're here, we've done damage to our body, there's super compensation, but if we leave it too long, it'll come back to where we were, back to a baseline. We haven't actually got any benefit out of that workout. So if we time it just right, and we have our second workout at the peak of this super compensation, which becomes a new baseline, we then, again, we go into a deficit because we've had a workout, but we're going to then super compensate higher than we were before. And if we continue that trend and follow the things that Stevie B spoke about before, around recovery and spacing out your workouts, you'll find a distinct difference from where we were 4 weeks ago. So that's in simple terms, the progressive overload, and that can happen in many different ways, which Steve will touch on in a second. So I'm going to talk about, like I said, if you go have a workout and you get super compensation, but some may think that if you have a really big workout, you'll get even more compensation, but in theory that doesn't quite work. So what it looks like if you do too much, if your workout's too big and you jump off the cliff, and like I said in one of my others, you're racing an F1 when you're not quite there yet. Also, this is our recovery. So if you have your workout too quick and you don't get to the point of super compensation, and you don't have, let's say, 2 days rest, and you only have a single day rest, you haven't actually reached this point here. So there's no point having another workout, because you'll do your damage as you would anyway, and you'll end up worse off than you were before. So we spoke about recovery there a little bit before, but Steve's got a whole presentation on that. So that's if you don't recover enough and you miss the point of super compensation. And my point before, that if you do more, you'll get more. It's also the opposite. So if you do a little workout, something that you're a little bit uncomfortable, but not really, you get a little bit of compensation because your body's only going to adapt to what it needs to, like I said before. So you get a little bit, but it won't last that long. So if you don't do another workout, you'll lose that super compensation. And just not as long lasting. All right, so the sweet spot's much smaller if first workout's smaller. And my point I was trying to make before was if you do a bigger workout, you'll get more compensation. It doesn't quite work. So it just takes longer to recover. And because the recovery period is longer, the super compensation is actually less. And it's not as effective because you can't get that second workout in here, which will then boost you further. Okay, so sometimes bigger is not always better. Isn't that right, Steve?
That is absolutely correct.
Absolutely. So don't go too big with workouts. We've touched on that in one of our info sessions before as well. So just be conscious of that. There is a sweet spot. You don't want to jump off the cliff and go too hard. You don't want to do too little because you won't get the compensation. And you need to have that recovery. And all those points we've touched on before. So I'm going to throw over to Steve this time. He's going to take us through starting a cardio program, what that looks like.
Amazing.
So go for it, Steve.
Okay. So we probably would have actually seen these slides before if we've had a look at my presentations. This was on starting a cardio-based program. So there are two different ways you can obviously have a program. There's a moderate continuous type of training versus a high intensity interval style of training, okay? So I know that there's a lot on this screen, so I'll try and do my absolute best to describe everything here for you. So moderate continuous training, we just have one consistent speed. Okay, now this speed isn't too difficult. We want to be at about a 5 or a 7 out of 10. So we're not actually sprinting, okay? Nice and easy, relatively easy, moderate. Running for about 20 to 30 minutes to start off with, okay? This is really with week 1. And then of course, over time, with that progression, as Kane mentioned, we just increase that by about 10% each week, or every 2 weeks, I should say as well. Underneath, you'll see that there is an example, okay? So let's just say we start off running for 25 minutes, which roughly equals 3 kilometers. That should be at about a 6 out of 10. But there's also another example where you can run for just 20 minutes at about a 7 out of 10, and it still equals 3 kilometers, okay? So we should be aware of that. Now, I just quickly want to part that with a question from Kerry, where she says, how do we know, or how do we not lose that compensation? It depends on your training style, okay? So ideally, about 48 hours after a workout, you want to be able to train again, okay? So that's a general rule of thumb. 48 hours after a training session, you want to be able to have already. The next part you can see we have is a high intensity interval training. This is where you have at least 2 alternating speeds, okay? So we're working at one high intensity speed at say a 7 to 9 out of 10, anywhere in between there. And then after we do that speed, we work at a 0 to 4 out of 10, okay? So that means you can stand completely still or do something like a little light jog after that. Now, be aware, the harder that you swim, one out for you, where 1 minute for about 250 meters at a 7.5 out of 10. And then you want to jog for 1 minute after that, okay? So that's a 1-to-1. Work for 1 minute, rest for 1 minute. It's because it was only a 7.5 out of 10. It wasn't too difficult yet. But then afterwards, if you look at example 2, we can see you sprint roughly for about 30 seconds, which means that you can rest for 1 minute, okay? So there's a 1-to-2. Then let's go to the next slide, Kane, where we'll talk about starting a resistance training program. So with the resistance training program, now this is specific to full body. You just want 8 to 10 different exercises, okay? You want to be able to train this at least twice per week to be able to get that development, that progressive overload that Kane touched on just before. We want to be able to start at least 1 set, and then we can increase slowly from there. You'll see that there are different goals that you can achieve, either strength goals, hypertrophy, which means muscle growth, or endurance, okay? So you'll see that there are different rep ranges there. You can see the table, so I won't read that one out for you, and I'll show you some examples on the next slide, but we also want to emphasize large muscle groups over just a single muscle, okay? So what I mean by that is a squat is more beneficial than a leg extension. So you want to be thinking of squats before leg extensions. Let's go to the next slide, and I think Kane will overtake now, and we'll briefly touch on a cardio-based program.
So like we touched on before, please, if you have any questions like Kerry has, Tam has also said that Steve is frozen, but hopefully he's unfrozen. If you have any questions, please post them in the comments now, because we're going to go through some examples of what it would look like. And hopefully, if you're at home and you've got your program in front of you, you can start to fill out your own program with this sort of example. So we've got our training program. This is what it looks like. This is the one we provided for you guys to use. So like Steve said before, recommended if you're going to do a run, if you're new to running, start with 2 to 3 sessions a week. Okay. And what they may look like if you're pretty new is you might say, I'm going to run for 30 minutes. I'm going to start with a 30-minute run. That might equal 5K. So if you're running at 6-minute kilometers, is your measure. But on the last run, you've gone a little bit quicker and you've gone 5.5 kilometers, and that's your progressive overload. All right, so you can plan for that, but it might even just happen. So if you say I'm going to run for 30 minutes, you might find that you're starting to run a little bit further each time. And that's progressive overload happening without even thinking about it. Or you can program for that and say that in my 30-minute run today, I want to run 5 minutes and 45 seconds per kilometer instead of 6 minutes this time. So you can plan for that. So you can increase intensity, which is in this case is the distance has gone up. So the other thing to be conscious of is how much is too much. So I've got a question here from Marie. So you'll feel the fatigue in your body. So if you're a runner, you might feel that throughout the day you're not actually feeling better. You might feel lethargic. Your body will be sore. And like Steve's touched on, you should be able to do another session within 48 hours of your last one. So if you get to the point where you can't do that and you're too sore because of the last session, 48 hours afterwards, that's your body saying it needs to rest. Okay, so listen to your body. The more training you do, the more you get in touch with your body and you'll be able to know those cues. So what we're talking about here, so we've increased our intensity, which is in turn increased our distance. Okay, so another thing to be aware of is your total distance in a week can be another progressive overload measure that you can use. So we've got maybe next week we aim for 16 or 16 and a half. All right, and that can be spread out throughout the 3 runs. All right, so you might go a little bit quicker in each one without just going super quick in one. All right, so each session could be a measure, or you can do a weekly load as your progressive overload. So week 2 will be a little bit more, and so on and so forth until you get to your 10Ks at the end of your 6 weeks, or in 4 weeks like Ingy did, which is amazing. So another example would be we've gone 30-minute run, and we plan to go just for a 35-minute run. So we increase our intensity by just 10%, as Steve spoke about. But it means that our distance is also going longer because we've just been running at the same speed. So still 6-minute kilometers, but just for an extra 5 minutes. That's another way we can progressively overload our body. All right. So yeah, we've gone up 10% with our time in that week. So if you're struggling to add 10% each week, it may be that every second week you add that 10% increase. Okay, it doesn't have to happen every session, and it's not going to happen straight away. You need time for your body to adapt to what it's doing and what it needs to do. So that's our cardio program that we've been given, the template that you've got. I'm going to get Stevie B to run through the strength part, which is also including HIIT training. And there's a little example here. So take it away, Steve.
Awesome. So with the resistance style of training, you'll notice we have exercise, sets, so the collective number of repetitions that you do with a rest, the amount of weight that you do, so the intensity that you're working at, and the amount of rest that you do. So remember how I mentioned you want to be able to do 8 to 10 exercises. Now this is specific to full body, okay? If we're doing, say, just upper body only, you want to be doing about 6 exercises. So these examples are all specific to full body exercises, okay? Deadlifts, squats, walking lunges, okay? So these are all big exercises. These are using large muscle groups. Remember, we want to emphasize those over smaller muscle groups. We then go to a little bit more of that upper body, okay? So we have a bench press, we have a push-up, we have a pull-up, reverse fly, and shoulder press, okay? So 8 exercises, full body, absolutely perfect. I like to think 4 lower body, 4 upper bodies, probably most ideal. On the next column, you'll see that we have 3 sets, okay? Now, if you're just beginning, you can start at 1 set. That's completely fine, but 3 sets is also quite beneficial for you. Here, our goal is quite clearly muscle hypertrophy or increase in muscle size. How do I know that? It's because the amount of reps that we're doing is in that hypertrophy zone, okay? So 8 repetitions. With weights, you can see roughly 70% is in the intensity, okay, as was touched on before, and there's the adequate amount of rest to actually perform the same intensity for your next set. Now, this is specific to strength training, but what if I want to do a HIIT-based program? Which, Hannah, I can see that you've just asked the question. How long do you know if your goal's more specific to cardio? With the rest time, okay? So this is where we talk about work to rest ratio. Let's take a squat, for example. We have a squat, we want to be working, you can notice it says reps/time. You want to be working for 30 seconds. In terms of rest, you want to be working you want to be resting for at least 30 seconds as well, okay? That's the idea there for just beginning. You can get a little bit fancy later on, and that's where a personal trainer can really help teach you that and plan that for you. But this is really intended for beginning programs yourself, okay? So if you're going to be doing a HIIT-based program, you want to be working, say, 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, 45 seconds on, maybe 30 seconds off as well. You can get a little bit less rest for your work time, and you'll kind of work that out a little bit yourself. Kerry asked another question as to how do we deal with muscle atrophying? Muscle atrophy, for anyone who isn't aware, is simply just the loss of muscle. How to cope with that essentially is to increase your work output just a little bit and slowly, okay? The goal is to continue increasing your strength. How to keep doing that? Each 2 weeks or every 2 weeks, increase the intensity by 10%. So what you'll notice in the slide as well, with sets, with reps, with the weight, you want to increase that, just one of those, by 10% every week or 2 weeks. And with the rest, you can also decrease the amount of rest instead, okay? So only fix one modality of that. Are there any questions relating specific to the strength and HIIT-based programs? No, don't have anything yet. I will answer them if they do come about. Am I going to make you late, Ross? No, we're just about to finish here. This is the last slide, I believe. But yeah, so if I can really emphasize something, just make sure you have 8 to 10 exercises and keep increasing the intensity every 1 to 2 weeks. All right, that takes us to the end of it. So thank you everyone for watching. So Kane, do you have any last words there?
No. Just please, if you're not a member of the Facebook group, jump on there already, and go and join Roz for a yoga in about 1 minute.
Perfect. Take care, everyone.
But that's about it for me. Thank you very, very much, guys. We'll see you next time.